Welcome to The Creative Cure, the podcast that explores questions related to creativity and the mental health of creative artists. Hi everyone, my name is Petra Borzinski. I'm a psychotherapist, vocal coach and writer. I also used to be a geoscientist in a former life, but to go into all of that would lead too far here. But if you want to know a bit more about me, you can find all of that on my Substack and I have links for you. And I'll be your host in today's episode about nature's muse and how we can unveil the power of nature on creative minds, because maybe we should all invoke Thalia as the muse of idyllic poetry a tiny bit more. In the tranquil embrace of nature, where whispers of leaves and the symphony of streams reign, the spirit of Thalia, the Greek muse of idyllic poetry, flourishes. Now, if you think that sounds a bit contrived, you might even be right. But since I've chosen a headline that talks about invoking muses, I had to find a hook to draw you in somehow. And basically, I've just attacked you with my finest purple prose here. But I'm also half serious, at least, about it, because for artists navigating the tumultuous seas of their minds, so I'm still not done with my purple prose, nature can serve as an anchor, and connecting with nature can really be a profound step towards our mental well-being. But we have to take that step. And we often don't. We're glued to screens and phones all day. We hunch over our desks or at least spend significant amounts of time indoors. We perpetually make excuses that we have deadlines and we keep our behinds firmly planted on our seats. I am as guilty of it as the next person. And that's why I decided to make today's episode about, a bit of purple prose alert again, letting nature weave its magic to nurture our creativity and soothe our minds. Now, I'll admit it, I love silence. That might sound strange coming from someone who has spent much of her life as a professional musician and teacher of same. But outside that particular context, I'm not doing too well with too much noise around me. And I instinctually seek out silence, especially after I've spent significant amounts of time in, let's say, loud environments or if I'm surrounded by a lot of people. Of course, I could just find that silence at home, and often I do. But the type of distractions you encounter in your home environment is sometimes not conducive to really switch off. And on an even more profound level, if I just speak for myself, nature provides me, with far more inspiration than my home environment does. Of course, there are exceptions to that rule, but by and large, it applies. Nature, for me, simply is a never-ending source of imagery and symbolism. And I notice every time I go back to writing after a walk that I will express myself in a much more vivid way. But it's not just that, of course. Like all creative artists, or basically humans, I sometimes also feel stressed and frustrated, or I wallow in self-doubt, as we probably all do from time to time. And while going out into nature doesn't magically solve all my problems, it gives me comfort and a certain type of relief, and it calms my senses by actually engaging them. Now, if that sounds weird to you, it actually isn't, because if you just picture this, when you're sitting at home at your desk, you basically get tunnel vision because you stare at a screen. That's not relaxing for anything, least of all our eyes, but also not our brains. But when we're outside, we don't constantly focus on one tiny little spot. And that ultimately helps us with restoring energy levels. And even tiny micro breaks, like looking at a green space through your window for 40 seconds, that's really all it takes, can restore energy, focus, and attention. If you want to look into that a bit deeper, as usual, I will put all the links and all the research into the show notes for you, and you can find all of that on my Substack channel. Well, of course, that's just me talking about largely personal experience, but we know that spending at least 2 hours a week in nature is good for your mental health and well-being. And again, if you'd like to have a closer look into some research, I'll pop all of that into the links for you as well and into the show notes. Suffice it to say, we meanwhile have ample reason to believe that spending time in nature can reduce stress levels and improve mood by lowering blood pressure, heart rate, or cortisol levels. So that's a hormone that's really quite important in how we deal with stress and how stressed we feel on a day-to-day level. Going into nature is also creativity boosting because it enhances cognitive functions like attention, memory, and problem solving. In a nutshell, stress reduction and attention restoration go hand in hand. Again, I'll put some links about that into the show notes for you. And we also know that tasks that involve attentional control tend to show beneficial effects after nature exposure and detrimental effects after urban exposure. It's quite complicated and not straightforward because multiple cognitive mechanisms are involved. Again, if you want to dive in deeper, I will link the relevant research for you. And you can read up on all of that in more detail if you want to. But in short, attentional control tends to be better after nature exposure. Exposing yourself to nature can also help you regulate your body's internal clock and help you to basically have a better sleep-wake cycle in a way. If you expose yourself to sunlight or natural light first thing in the morning, you will gradually start to feel more tired at night and you will get more restful sleep. Provided that within a certain time frame before you go to bed, you keep those darn screens switched off. But it should actually help you to take less time to fall asleep. And the quality of your sleep should also improve. Needless to say, if you have longer lasting problems with insomnia or disrupted sleep, that's always a reason to see your general practitioner. In short, doing physical activities outdoors can be fun. It can also be challenging, which is a good thing. And it's usually more rewarding than just doing exercise indoors in front of your TV. And if you're more motivated to do physical exercise, you're also on track to help your body release endorphins, which can act as natural painkillers. They also have mood-enhancing properties. And as most of you will probably know, there is no mind-body split. It really and truly all goes hand in hand. Now, why is nature such a powerful inspiration? Well, first of all, nature is literally a feast for our senses. Colors, shapes, textures, sound, smells. Stimulating our senses with something new tends to evoke emotions in us, and those emotions don't even have to be nice all the time. If you've ever walked past a big pile of fresh poo on one of your outings, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. But whichever way you turn it, nature will provide you with a wealth of metaphors, symbols, and stories that are just itching to be told. And it doesn't even matter what your main artistic discipline is. If you are a visual artist of sorts, it becomes all about light and shadow and colors and shapes, changing seasons, life, death, decay, and rebirth. Writers can naturally also explore those topics like life, death, and love and conflict through the lens of natural phenomena. And a million metaphors and symbols wait to be explored. And by putting yourself into the midst of it all, you will find more inspiration than staring at an empty page at your desk. What I'm trying to say here, because I continually experience this myself, if you struggle with writer's block, get up and get out. It really, really helps. And even musicians can use nature as a source of inspiration. For example, by playfully incorporating sounds like birdsong or rain, wind or waves into their compositions or songs. But there's much more to it. I, for example, sometimes just sit down at a local foreshore and tune into the rhythm of the waves because there's something really soothing but also inspiring in following the patterns and variations of natural cycles, because that's really what they truly are. And one thing I haven't even mentioned yet, Many people think that nature is only beneficial for artists who seek, let's call it personal healing or well-being through their connection with nature. But that's not the whole picture. Nature can also inspire us to care about collective or societal issues like environmental problems, cultural conflicts, or human rights violations. Helen Chadwick springs to mind, who used the myth of the 12 labors of Heracles to create a series of really quite moving photographs that critique gender stereotypes and social norms. If you want to have a look at those, again, they'll all be in the show notes and on my Substack. There are, of course, many, many more examples far beyond the scope of this article, but it's not just about yourself, it's also about society at large. Now, of course, how can you incorporate all of this? Where do you start? If going out in nature isn't easy for you for whatever reason, could be anything from accessibility to just feeling stuck in a rut, I have a couple of hints and tips for you now to ease yourself in slowly. I'll also put a link of Mind UK's advice on nature and mental health into the show notes for you, if you maybe want to read about that. So the first thing I personally recommend is that you just give it a shot and that you spend some time outdoors every day to turn it into a habit. It doesn't have to be long. Even 5 or 10 minutes are better than nothing, even if it's just a small walk around the block until you can see some open sky. Because, I know not everyone is lucky enough to have a forest or open fields or a nice park around the corner. But there are small islands of nature, even in inner city environments. Maybe channel your inner detective and try to find them, because it will really boost your mood and creativity. There's much to be said for starting each day with a nature walk, if that's something you can physically do and also time-wise, especially if there's enough natural light. If you do it for a while, it will honestly change your life. It will energize you, it will improve your mood. And try to be really present on that walk, whether it's through a park or a forest or simply around your neighborhood. Just notice the small pockets of nature and life around you and listen to their sounds. So maybe try to keep the earbuds out and don't scroll your phone while you're doing it. That would forfeit the purpose. If all of this still feels like a stretch, maybe start with bringing some nature indoors. Decorate your workspace with plants, with flowers, or if that's not for you, with objects from nature like pebbles or shells or pieces of wood, whatever tickles your fancy there. Or listen to natural sounds like birdsong or rain or waves. It's obviously not as good as the real thing, but it's still a start. And it still makes a difference if you can have the occasional look at these things. Maybe also use nature as a prompt, so you can write about what you see, hear, smell, or touch, or taste. You can draw or paint what you observe. You can use nature as a metaphor or a symbol for your writing. The ideas are truly endless. So the next time you're out and about, just take a notebook with you. Or make use of your voice memos if you're looking for inspiration. Although, as I already mentioned, it's sometimes good to try and let that old device rest for a bit as well. What you could also try is that you just connect with other creative artists who love nature. You could join a local or online group that shares your passion for nature and art. You can exchange feedback, give each other support, share inspiration with the people you meet there. And you can also do this in my chat, by the way. Again, if you want to join us there in the community of like-minded people, I'll put all of that info into the show notes for you. Now, reflection is always a good starting point, and if you know me, you will also know that I always like to finish my episodes with a few questions for reflection, and this one won't be any different. That'll probably be one thing I'll stick with as we move forward with this podcast, because I've made a couple of changes that I'll still go into later. So my first question for you would be, did you ever think about how nature could help you overcome creative blocks or challenges? And another thing you could think about would be, How does nature influence the choice of your medium, your style, or your technique? And perhaps does nature foster a sense of connection, of belonging or identity for you? Or is that something you haven't experienced yet? Does nature inspire you to express your emotions, your thoughts, or experiences in your creative work in any way? And how do you usually do that? Does it maybe even motivate you to address social or environmental issues? And last but not least, do you think that engaging more with nature will improve your physical and mental well-being? Or has it done that already for you? Nature is both a source of inspiration and support for me, and I really hope it is for you too. So please don't hesitate to leave your reflections in the comments, in our chat over at Substack. I'm always happy to hear from you. And I'll be back soon. Up until then, keep on finding the creative cure. The very idea of the creative cure is that mental well-being information should be available to everyone, and that creativity is not a magical unicorn for a select few. That's why the latest newsletters and podcasts will always be freely available. But posts and podcasts older than 2 months will be moved to my archive from now on, which is only accessible to paid subscribers. It takes time to craft this content, and your support is really appreciated. It's what keeps the creative cure going and free for everyone. And if you would like to support my work, here's what you can do. For less than the price of 2 coffees a month, you can become a paid subscriber of the Creative Cure. That will give you access to my full archive of posts, not just the latest ones. And it will also help to keep this newsletter and this podcast going. You can do all of that over on my Substack channel. You can also give a gift to the creative person in your life. All the links will be over there as well. If that's not for you, you can also have a look around my webpage. I have a range of services available that might be helpful to you or someone you know. And last but not least, I'm always super happy if you share the Creative Cure with your creative friends. Spreading the word is hugely appreciated, and that's something everyone can do. So I'll hope this gives you a bit of joy and a couple of ideas, and that you might spread the word.